So the purpose of this video is to help you folks understand what's the difference between a stratified sample and then, oh, where's a pointer here? Between a stratified sample, that's color. Here we go. Between a stratified sample versus a cluster sample, because both kinds of samples are breaking your sampling frame or your population that you want to sample um, um, into groups. So I thought about actually been thinking a lot about my hometown this week, and I grew up in Calais. And suppose I wanted to know the voters in Calais, Calais voters with their opinion on, I don't know, you name it. It can be anything. Um, so if I wanted to do, now, so how would I conduct a stratified sample for those? So and if you've watched some of the videos and you've seen some of that, what you do is you break the town up into strata or groups, and it's nice to have them as some kind of similar characteristic. Um, I don't know if you know Calais at all, but I mean, Maple Corners tends to be kind of affluent, though I don't know. I think it's all kind of affluent now. When I was growing up there, Maple Corners downtown was pretty affluent, and the outskirts were not. North Calais, not so much, but then you had the lake, and then Adamant was kind of like way off in the south part of the town, and East Calais was just different. I mean, nothing wrong with people that live in East Calais, don't get me wrong, but. It was just a different, it was different for Maple Corner. So if I wanted to do, I don't know, if I wanted to do a stratified sample and I wanted to select, I mean, this is not big enough, but suppose I wanted to select five people, five households in each of these. Um, well, let's see, let's do Maple Corners, North Calais, East Calais, and Adamant, and then in the middle here with the town hall that's kind of different. Those pretty sparse. Let's just keep it easy. We got these four little villages in the town. Let's just say we're going to pick a random sample, and that'll represent our our sampling frame or our population. They're kind of interchangeable. Sampling frame is who you're going to pick. Like if I wanted to, I don't. Let's not get off track here. I want to sample this town, so. So what you do with a stratified sample, you decide, okay, I want to sample five people or five households in each of the four villages or in that area, the town, and then ask your opinion about whatever. So how would I sample them? Well, if you want it to be a random sample, because that was the other question that was asked, how do you tell if the difference between a random sample or a stratif or just a non-random sample? Or a simple random sample versus a random sample versus something that's not random. Well, let's answer the simple random sample. When doing a stratified sample, you can't get a simple random sample because you're deliberately a simple random sample says I can have all possible subgroupings and they're equally likely. So if I wanted to say I'm doing four villages and I'm asking for five people or five households in each village, that's 20 subjects or 20 subjects. And if a simple random sample says I could pick all 20 of them and make corners, and then I wouldn't be picking anybody from North Calais or East Calais or Adamant. So while a simple random sample is the gold standard, it isn't always a good sample because you don't want to have people, the people's town, you don't want to have all the people living up corners who used to be fairly affluent. Um, speak for the rest of the town, right? So the random has to come in by how you pick them. So if I wasn't going to do a simple random sample, so then how do I introduce a random sample into using a stratified sample to avoid having get five in each village? And that's the way it worked. So if it's not random, you could do well, let's see. I mean, let's see. They show us the houses here. I know Google used. There you go. So if I wanted to just I could number the houses, then I could pick every fifth one. So I'm kind of doing a stratified sample, and to get my five houses from the from this area town. So, uh, is a stratified sample not a good sampling technique? No, it's soft and pretty good. And sometimes it acts like a random sample, but it's not truly a random sample. Okay, um, So if we did like every third house in the village, one, two, uh, three, four, or three, three, four, right? Those would be my five places. So I'm done with Maple Corners. I don't want to sample any more people in there. Then I could go to North Calais and do the same kind of thing and pick the five people. Now, what if I wanted to just be a stratified random sample? So then what you're going to do is you would number. There's a few ways to do it, but what you want to do is you have to have some kind of random process of picking the subjects, picking who you're going to sample. So you could give everybody, well, we have the 911, of course, that's not true. I guess if the town would give us a property number, and I have no idea what numbers those, I mean, what format those numbers take, but they might be good enough. They probably would give us that information for this. What you can do is let's say that every house or every household or every 911 location in the town of Calais has a 8-digit property number. Okay, and we want to pick 20 of them. So one thing we could do, random.org, it's a great website if you need to generate random numbers. Um, it also does a nice job at passwords. If you need passwords and you don't want to rely on Google's or whatever, this password thing is a different thing. But I digress. This is about getting your numbers. So we want to do integers, and I mean maybe there'll be some, and we want to do 20 integers. Maybe we should do more than that because sometimes what'll happen is doing it this way you have repeats and we don't want to do any repeats. So let's do 50 of them and then we just won't use them all. And let's say we want, I don't know, if they're, let's say they're 4-digit numbers. So they probably don't have zero. Maybe they have zero. So let's go 0001. So you'd have to look at the data to find out. And up to 9999. It's probably more than that, but, and then we're going to sample these in five. That will give us 10 in each. What if we do 10 numbers or 10 columns? This doesn't matter. We're going to get the numbers. So then what we can do is we can go find property number 7,914. Go to the town and sample that person. Would have to keep track of it depends on the way this is like numbering the whole town. You'd have to go find that household, and if it's in Maple Corners, good. That's one of the ones in Maple Corners. If that's in down by the town hall, I mean, I guess you could have to draw lines and split the uh, split the town up. But Adamy, let's see, where is it? Or if it's up in North Calais, et cetera, et cetera. So you'd find that household, and that'd be one of your items in your sample. Then you'd go to the next number, and if then find out what section of town that's in, go sample that household. You'd have to keep track of where in town they are because you remember once you hit the 5 max in that section of town, you've got your full sample, and you wouldn't want to draw any more in that because you don't want to bias the result anymore than it could be done. Okay, so by using this random number generator and let them random number generator pick what household you're doing, that's a random sample. Um, Okay, so I think we kind of kill stratified. I hope that makes sense. The difference, what's a stratified sample? How do you run a stratified sample? How do you make it random? Now, what's the difference between stratified and cluster? Well, a cluster sample is you're going to pick the clusters and then you're going to sample every individual in that cluster. You're not going to do a random sample inside it. Okay, so what we could do if I go back to use my Calais model, I could probably break this up into smaller clusters and then give each cluster a number. And again, if you just wanted to pick every third cluster, that would be is certainly work and pick and then but you'd have to do if we wanted uh maybe it's falling apart. I don't know if I'd want to do I don't know if I'd want to do one cluster and do so I'd have to limit the number of houses. If I put each group of say like if I want to do all in one cluster, I could say a group of 20 houses, that would be a cluster. Another group of 20 houses would be another cluster. And then I'd only be picking one cluster. Probably not going to give us a great sample. We could break all these houses up into groups of 5, and then we could go pick 4 random clusters and then interview all 5 of those houses in that cluster. So you see, you're not, the randomness comes in what clusters you're picking, not who you're picking in the cluster. Okay. That actually probably works pretty well. So I don't, does that make sense of what a cluster, the difference between a cluster sample and a stratified? Stratified, you break them into groups, and then you do a random sample in each group. With a cluster sample, you're going to randomly pick a cluster, sample everybody in that cluster, everything in that cluster. Um, where I have used this in my life when I was a forestry major at UVM, they had us do one course, and we had to do a species inventory of a plot of land. Uh, Actually, it was out of the Jericho Town Forest, and and what they do is they gave us a lot of an area of land, and we had to. They gave us a little topo map. This is before the internet, before personal computers were what they are now. And we put, let our pencil randomly fall onto an area in our plot, and then we'd go to that area as best we could, draw a 6-foot circle and do a species inventory of everything inside that circle. And then we did that. I don't remember how long. Then we had to go type our information in over a dial-up modem on a TRS-80. It took forever. I didn't know what I was doing either. But anyways, I digress. So stratified, you break them up into groups. You randomly sample inside each group. A cluster sample, you randomly select the cluster. You break the town or whatever up into clusters, and you randomly select the cluster, and then you sample everything inside the cluster. Okay, so I think, here, let me pause this. I'll go make sure I answered all these questions. Oh boy, I'm having a hard time doing this, huh? I'm not going to swear. Let's see, was there an Alt P? All right. So I guess I want to make sure you understand the difference between a simple random sample, a random sample, and then when it's neither, it's just not random. So the simple random sample is when every possible grouping can be made. And when you're doing a stratified sample or a cluster sample, that can't happen. Um, there can be random samples, but if you're using the random selection process through using a number, not using our intuition, because we're biased as heck. I don't want to go way out to Cranberry Bog up here in Calais. It's too far out, so I'm going to let that bias me. Whereas the random number generator says, do it. You're going to go sample them. Okay, I hope this helps. Let me know if you need more. And make sure to watch Dr. Stevens' video on this if you haven't. Okay. I want to end this.